Welcome. Now, do you have young kids? Have you thought about homeschooling them? Are you teaching them at home? What are you teaching them at home? We're going to get into this very important topic with our guest today, Dr. Pratt. You don't want to miss
Hey
this.
everybody.
You don't want to miss this because he has insights. Okay. Hi, thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. I am TD Flenaugh. We have this podcast to help parents and caregivers with having the resources, strategies, and tools needed to make sure that their children are on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Okay, here we are. We are ready to begin. This is Dr. Pratt. He is a social media strategist extraordinaire, and he actually happens to do some homeschooling with his daughter. And we're going to hear about all his insights. We're going to give you information about how you could work with him. Dr. Pratt, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I do want to hopefully let the audience know that I want to learn as much as they learn. So I would love to have feedback after the watch in the comment section to let me know that I'm not the only person on the planet dealing with a hyperactive toddler. And I think that's one of the biggest issues is that we're parenting kind of in this concept that it's just us. Like we're the
Mm-hmm.
only ones. Like everybody else's kid seems totally cool, and they're learning at the right rate, and they're meeting all their metrics. And it's just our kid that is a complete fool. Like it's just ours. Yeah. It's not the rest of the world. So I just don't believe that. I don't believe it. But I think as a community of parents who have hyperactive children, we're doing a bad job of supporting each other and letting each other know it's okay. You're not alone.
Mm. Okay, so this is some good insight. So he, is wanting some feedback. Please put some comments in the chat. Like let us know if you're having some of the same issues. Now, we I know Dr. Pratt because he is part of a community that and he's his own community even. But again, like I said, he does a lot of social media work, and he helps me with some of my work, of course. And we wanted to always find out from our guest what made them fall in love with learning. So tell us about yourself as a kid.
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that. That's a good question. My mother was a strong believer in homeschooling in the 70s. So, and also was raised in a religious household. So I had to learn to read the Bible at an early age. And I learned early on that I could get admiration or acknowledgement or even praise if I read with emphasis, if I read with a tone and
Mm,
more aliveness in my reading the Bible. People would
okay.
clap, and I was like, oh. So as I don't know why, but as a child, that made me smirk and smile.
Okay.
So I read the scriptures with different voices at 4 and 5. So back to your question though, what I guess made me fall in love with learning was the power that I could have to influence adults
Mm,
by them discovering that Martin knows how to read, and not
yeah.
just that, he can read the big words, and not just that. I had this is going back to I was born in the 70s, so there was a famous kid in the 70s had a TV show, and he looked like me, was chocolate like me, had big cheeks like me, so people thought I was him. Sometimes I had a big afro, as you imagine.
Okay.
It's the 70s, 71.
Wait a minute.
So
Tell me who this child actor is that they
I think it
thought
was
you looked
Rodney
like.
L. Ripley or something. Rodney, I can't remember his name. He had it's, I have to do the research because I didn't. The big closest thing I could say to him is like he looked like Gary Coleman. He was the '70s
Ah.
version of Gary Coleman.
Mm, Okay,
And
so
this
they
is
thought you
early
were a
70s.
celebrity. Okay, so you were doing it.
Right.
So back in the you know, we know people do stuff for the gram now, right? You were doing it
Exactly,
for you were
exactly.
doing it for that
Exactly.
audience, getting that little lift up for,
In the real world, in front of the librarian. So I would always go to the library to get new books.
Mm.
And they would be, oh, you can't take out Moby Dick or whatever book I wanted. It was like Agatha Christie or something. I was some adult book, right? And they would go, ooh, you can't take that out. I would say, can I read? If I can read for you, can I take it out? I said, oh, sure. They would understand.
Negotiation. Okay.
And I read, they were like, and I just didn't read. I read, she was worried about the sound.
The
And so I was this little
drama.
kid, chocolate with big cheeks, big afro, and just so it was very much for me when I saw Hollywood understand that little chocolate black boy on these shows. Back then it was the TV shows, comedy shows. I was living that life in real life, in getting things I wanted because I couldn't just it wasn't because I was a problem child or acting out child. I was actually doing what society, I was exceeding the level of expectation society had for me. Because again, this is the 70s after the riots, burned out hood in Newark, New Jersey, empty apartment buildings. And I would go to places that were learning institutions or learning places
Mm-hmm.
or courthouse or whatever. And they would be surprised that this child who the community looked like the news would say, was just we were dilapidated, we were depleted.
Can
We
you
had
stop?
lived through the '60s.
So you keep oh so this okay so tell us about, like you said, the neighborhoods were burned in the
Yeah,
70s.
the Newark, New Jersey back then. This was after the riots.
Which
So
riots?
the riots of I think it's '69 or '6. So I was born in '71. So
Okay.
I when I came to the planet, it was hell. Hell had just happened. So I grew up thinking that abandoned apartment buildings and mattresses outside and broken glass was normal. That's what I thought. So when I went into those institutions that were there to serve the community, they were shocked that could be educated. So that's when I fell in love with learning because I realized I could go further in my child mind than I could normally if I showed up as a learned student or a learned person. And
Mm.
that power, I at some point later on in my life, but not now, I relished that power. At some point, I discovered that it was all power ain't good power. But for I would say 10 years of my life, I realized I could get anything I wanted on the planet by being educated.
Wow. This is such a different answer than we've
I
had.
know you didn't expect to meet the black Lex Luthor.
This is a spin on this, like most people
Mm-hmm.
talk about,
Mm-hmm.
a parent really getting them into it.
Yeah,
I'm like that
that
it's
was me.
intriguing thinking about what it
Yes,
can get you, the power, like you're defying odds, or what's expected of you. So I
I love
really
say that
like
again.
that.
Defying odds.
Defying odds. Yeah. No, so I
Yes,
mean that's a great idea, like, right? Because sometimes, kids don't get that from learning. And I talk a lot, and I talk about in my book too, like we really have to be careful about the messages we send to kids, because sometimes we're sending the message that reading, writing, things like that are boring, are a punishment, and you were learning how to get power from it. Now, you did tell us that you were reading at 4 and 5. Like, now, how was that possible? Are you just a genius, or what do you remember about that process about learning to read?
you know, um, I never questioned it. I grew up with two parents who read, who were readers. We had a library in the house. Our
Mm-hmm.
first apartment we had was a apartment, but back then, our apartment was, I would say, it was 2 bedroom. Well, no, it was probably like a 3 bedroom. But we had two other rooms, my father's office, and so it was about like a 4 bedroom with two
Mm-hmm.
bathrooms.
Okay.
And it was in a house in New Jersey, so it wasn't the square apartment. It was like a house, second floor of a house. So we
Okay.
had extra rooms, a living room, a dining room. We had all the space. And in those spaces, my parents, one of the biggest things besides plants was books. We had
Okay.
subscriptions to everything. Life, Time, Ebony, Essence, Jet. So I information was available to me in a way, and like every Saturday night, my father would take me to the a newspaper store. Back then, they had stores that
Yes.
was all magazines and newspapers. So he would get the New Jersey Star Ledger Saturday night,
Okay.
so he could have access to the Sunday news
Mm.
Saturday night. So in this conversation, you're asking questions. And I'm thinking about things that I haven't really thought about for a while, and I'm realizing patterns. My desire to have access to information started, was I was inherited because I was around two people who didn't have college degrees but had a higher level of success because they understood how to read the tea leaves, so to speak. So my dad had New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Sunday Star Ledger in New Jersey. And he didn't get the Times. He only got Times on Sunday. He bought both together. He bought the New York Times and Star Ledger Saturday night. It was available to you. And the Wall Street Journal, he borrowed from a local office that would throw it out every night. He would literally go to the garbage and get the Wall Street Journal every night to be able to read what happened on the street the day. So he was getting old news there. And
Right.
then when he got financially secure, he got Wall Street Journal was a regular thing. So actually, my nickname in high school was Wall Street Journal.
Oh my goodness. So that's
Yeah,
so interesting. Like
I was
just
a
like
nerd. I was a complete nerd that was blessed to have older friends who protected
mm,
me.
okay.
But getting to your question, I don't remember why I learned to read other than the biggest desire I had was to keep getting the accolades. So I kept perfecting my learning.
Wonderful. So this is also something I talk about is like having that positive feedback because sometimes we give kids a lot of negative feedback. Like, like you did this wrong, you did
Yes.
that wrong. But we give that positive feedback, like that is something that's really great. Um, I don't know. I hear an echo. I don't know if you hear an echo, but I do.
No, I don't. You're lower. Now, unfortunately, all of a sudden, my neighbors are outside my window.
I
I don't know
can't
if you
hear
hear that.
anybody. I can't hear
Okay,
anybody.
okay.
I just hear that there's kind of an echo. So sorry about that with the sound. Um,
Dang.
so one thing that stood out to me is you also were saying that your parents didn't have college education, and um, sometimes people are intimidated. Like they're like, I don't know about that much about reading. I don't know about reading or whatever. But just having your kid around reading and talking about what they're
Yes,
reading, and some of it's kids
yes,
books, but some of it is like adult stuff. Because kids are interested in stuff, and a lot of times we're like, mind your business, or you don't have to worry about that. But
that part.
sometimes the kids are very interested, and we need to, feed that curiosity
Embrace.
in ways. Yeah, embrace
Hmm.
the curiosity. So, can you tell us a little bit about your educational journey, throughout your life?
Yeah. So, two quick stories, or maybe three. In New Jersey, they tested you. So I was homeschooled. My mother really believed in homeschooling. She did not believe in the education system. She was an ex Black Panther. So she really was like not about this life of giving. I want to make sure my mic. I just realized maybe you hear the echo because my mic is so far down. I just realized it's not.
Let's adjust.
my,
Let's
my bad.
adjust.
My bad. So, but my mother really believed in educating the community from the community, not allowing the school system to educate you. I,
Mm.
however, you know, wanting the accolades, need to go to school. So we battled, like battle. When I say battle, like a lot of this is reminding me of my 3 year old now. We battled in a sense of I wanted to go to school, and I would find reasons, legal reasons, that like neglect. I accused my mother
Ooh.
of educational neglect at 5. I said, the state of New Jersey says if this child does not go to school at school age, you're committing educational neglect. You know
So
what she
you
did?
found that in the reading?
Yes, in the library. And but the thing back then, think about the library was the Google back then. So the librarians, they knew the answer to everything.
So you asked the
So
librarian to tell us why you should go to school, or what? How did that come about? That's crazy. Like
no, well,
what?
see what I learned about adults. Here's the thing I learned about adults, especially in the 70s. If a black child, and I say this because I only been around black people, so I don't know about Spanish, I don't know about Italians, white, right? But if a black child went up to an older black person and said, "Excuse me, sir," in respect, like, "Oh, yeah, nice little respectful son." Okay, yes. What can I do for you, little child? And I would say, "Is it okay if my parents keep me home from school and don't let me go?" And
Ah.
they would say, "Oh no, no, it's not. That's not okay." And I was like, "Can you please tell me the law that tells me that's not okay?" They would, "That's a good question, Johnny, or Martin."
Mm.
And they would give me the statute. So guess what my mother did? That's the type of mother I had. My mother was, she was an excellent mother. Human being was another question, but excellent mother, right? I mean, excellent provider, we'll say.
Okay.
So she's super petty. So she said, okay, I will write to the capital, the state capital of New Jersey. I forget it's
Mm-hmm.
Trenton. I think it's Trenton. I'm used
Yeah.
to New York, so it's Albany, New York. But anyway, she wrote to the state capital, to assembly. The assembly, our local assembly person.
Mm.
So it's like we had the Senate and assembly. Assembly is like the House of Representatives from New Jersey, and he was a black guy. And she wrote to his office and says, "Can I get a deferment to teach my child at home?" They said, yes, if you give us your curriculum. So she never had been to college, created an educational curriculum that became the standard for New Jersey for homeschooling.
So you
so,
inherited this genius. Okay.
so,
You
so, so,
inherited
so
it.
check this out. I then got my father on my side because my father grew up in the streets. He was
Mm-hmm.
they got married after he got out of juvenile. They call it juvenile hall and stuff like that, juvenile
Mm-hmm.
detention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but he felt that the socialization, he didn't want me to be a wimp. They didn't say nerd back then, they said wimp. And he was like, no child of his is going to not be street smart. And the only way I was going to get street smart because of their lifestyle wasn't going to be because I hung around them. I had to get in the hood and be of the hood to know how to know how to survive as a black male.
Okay, hold that
So,
thought. We gotta go to commercial.
okay.
Okay, hold that thought. We're gonna hear more about how you got street smart after these messages. Okay.
The Rewrite Method and the Rewrite Method Workbook are your go to resource for helping kids to learn to fall in love with writing. It has the tips, tools, resources, strategies, and skill building activities to help kids fall out of writing hate and into loving to write. Get your book set today.
Okay, I'm back with Dr. Pratt. He's just telling us how he got his dad on his side because his mom was homeschooling him and he was young, but he was very knowledgeable and he was trying to
I did
battle
not
his
want to be
mom.
homeschooled.
So how did you get, what was the street like? Let us know what happens now.
So again, just to recap, in case you just joined, because I shared our live out to two different communities, and in case anybody's just coming in, I eventually got skipped in school. So they would test you in New Jersey before you got into school, and they would place you in your right grade if
Okay.
you were in a certain district. So in my district, you were standardized tested at 5 and 6 years old
Okay.
to get placed into the right school, right classroom, and I got placed into gifted and talented, they called it back then. And so I had a high standardized test. I always could take tests. I didn't even know what a test was, but I knew the answers to stuff. And because I could read, you could guess the right answer back in the 70s. based on the tone of the question. So, you think if Johnny would want apples, okay, want apples, uh, he has five. If Susie doesn't want apples, how many is he going to have? Five, because Susie don't want them. It's like, and I would actually. This is my thing. Not now. Not. I don't do this y'all now. But back then, I over wrote things, meaning that I gave answers above and beyond what was required.
Okay.
So that would give the person a snapshot into my thinking, and that did two things. That got them on my side, and that impressed them. So I would always in pencil write in a little bit more. Because remember, I'm homeschooled. I had to hold chalk at 3. I had to learn how to write on a blackboard. We had a blackboard. Let me tell you how my mother did. She put a damn blackboard on my door. I had when you open my bedroom door, there was a blackboard that would blah, 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 blah. So like it's this so my perception of my childhood before I was 6 was I was in prison in an educational institution called home. That's what I felt.
Heavy.
And so my
That's
father,
heavy.
remember, my father went to juvenile detention. He grew up on a street called Prince Street in New Jersey
Say it
and
again.
Newark. Prince.
Prince
So
Street.
when you look
Okay.
at the gangsters of New Jersey, the Black Mafia family, that we had a Black Mafia family in the 70s. All the gangsters came from his block.
I watched that show, BMF. No.
Well, that's a different BMF. That's the
With
90s BMF.
Detroit. Yeah,
The
go
original
ahead.
BMF, the OG BMF, was from Newark, New Jersey.
I
Because
heard
Newark, New
that.
Jersey is also where the Sopranos came. The Sopranos were based on a family called the Imperiale family. So the Tony Soprano is actually a real person, and that person lived in Newark, New Jersey, on a different side of town.
Okay.
So we had the Black Sopranos, and and my father was one of those, one of the street guys for the Black crime families. And so he was not about letting his child, not get indoctrinated into the world. And it reminded my institutional my mother teaching me at homeschool reminded of how he was institutionalized.
I see.
And so he was not, happy about that. But check this out. My dad loved my mother so much because she taught him how to read. So it was a very unique childhood,
That
to
would
say the
definitely
least.
do it. That make them feel indebted to someone.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. He respected her. And when my dad started flipping real estate, he taught her how to flip real estate. So
Okay.
so when they were a good couple. I didn't like that they were a good couple because I couldn't really play them
Tried
against
to
each
get
other.
in between them. It didn't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. And so I'm doing that same thing with my daughter now. As a 3-year-old, she tries to play us and like she bounces from one to the other. And my daughter's not home right now. My wife and my daughter are at the Bayou. I'm in Louisiana. They're in a different town, totally, but it's really close to the water. And her uncle just called me and said he's acting worse than she is, and she keeps running back to her mother because she's a toddler and she likes to try to play you. She's very smart, 3-year-old. She thinks she can get away with murder, and he's acting like a 2-year-old to her. She keeps going, "No, I can't deal with this nigga. He's crazy." He's like, I was like, listen, do what you gotta do, So we gotta keep this kid in line because she's out of control when it comes to her thought process. I'm seeing myself in her to some degree, but even worse. Like it's scary because I would never have tried that.
Give us a situation. Like, let's hear it.
She goes into the refrigerator because she's 61 pounds and she is 50 inches tall. So she's 3. She's like a mini athlete, like a mini version of Amazon. And so her arm strength is incredible. She can push a weight of 25 pounds. So and the thing is that she doesn't, she throws around her weight, but you know how somebody that knows they can do X, Y, and Z, they don't even think, like, there's not even a question. So the other day we have an ottoman, and she wanted the ottoman across the what? She just started pushing and moving the ottoman. Like that, not she's never done it before. She's just like, oh, now let me push it and move it. And you're like, how the hell? What the? and then she stops it and then jumps on top of the ottoman. Anyway, she grabs my wife's phone. My wife's phone has the Roku remote control on it.
Okay.
So we took it off of the device that she has so she can stop messing up the TV. She grabs my wife's phone and we hit the app.
Okay.
So it's not on the home page. And so she grabbed my wife's finger like this. And so she's like, what are you doing? What's wrong? What's going on? You have your device, you can see YouTube Kids and whatever she binge watches Sesame Street in Japanese or whatever. And she's very much like an anime kid to some degree, like at 3. She's just, loves other languages, loves watching those videos where the cat, the bottle and the cat meet and they, make the clicking sound. So it's almost ASMR, but also at the same time it's colors.
Okay.
And it's just so anyway, she tries to manipulate us. My point was that she tries to manipulate, and I'm seeing myself in small dosages of what happened later on in my life through that. Now, my mother was, I told this type of mother I had, her grandfather, her mother's father is like he's still alive, was like, he was like my mother. So she has 2 DNA sets of these strong, minded, educationally focused grandparents' energy in her.
Okay.
So it's difficult to not challenge her. You can't just say no. Her name is Zora. No, Zora. I actually have to. Also, a good example, even better. 3 days. I have two fingers up. 3 days, twice a day. She stopped breathing when she was 3 months old, 3 days old, sorry. And the reason why she stopped breathing was because the doctors would just come by and touch her. They would just start, examining her. So they called me frantic saying she stopped breathing for like 10 seconds or 5 seconds. And she's like, we think she's holding her breath. So I said, she has these grandparents that were stubborn and stern, and they didn't take any mess. So you need to identify yourself as to who you are and what you're going to do, and it should be okay. They're like, what? The fuck? What are you talking about? They call me back. Yo, it works. Yeah, I know. So we had a website up. We took the site down, but it was called For Zora because she stayed in the hospital 80 days, and she was born not breathing again for 11 minutes. So the nurses took turns and did the breath of the blowing in the breath, right, and pumping her heart until they got adrenaline. Once they gave her adrenaline, she took off. Now then she was in a tube for I think 2 days to make sure that her brain swelling, whatever. So she had at one point in her life she had 16 doctors that was in charge of her. So at the end of that time period, at 6 months old, they were like, she's going to be deficient, learning disabilities, there's going to be all these problems. She had no problem, no vision problem, no lung problem, no brain problem. In fact, the last doctor's appointment we had with the Children's Hospital, the neurologist was showing me her scans and was talking to me. Zora is 6 months old. She's sitting on my lap, just me and Zora in the doctor's office, and she's looking at me like, does this bee know that I'm here? So the doctor figured that out. She was a foreign person, and she said, "Is she looking at you with a disdain on her face?" I said, "Yes." You're not addressing her. She said, "Oh my God!" So, foreign people who are not of America, they're a little bit like, "Whoa, black kid acknowledges stuff, right?" So she's like, "Okay, fine, Miss Zora, you are the," and so Zora goes, at 6 months, she's hurt. She's right. I know. She's like, so anyway, the doctor's saying, I don't see anything wrong with her brain. And she's like, this is the example why I believe she's fine. So that's Zora. And I'm living, in this conversation, I'm reliving my life and you said my educational journey.
Yes.
And how I cannot drive by a parent this child. There's no moment that I can't teach her something. It's unfortunate. I wish I could. I cannot not take a break and then at the same time challenge. Did you get it? Did you get? She's like, she'll come by me and she'll tap my hand, and I'm like, what did I do wrong? And she'll smirk at me. I said, oh, I didn't say I love you, and she'll, whatever, and then she'll walk away. And then I have to leapfrog. What I try to do with my child is I try to get ahead of her, and I'll say, but make sure you go do that to your mother too, because your mother loves you too. And so she's, oh right, she does. My mother, okay, and she runs to her mother. And so every time I engage with her, I'm ahead of her. I have to, if I allow her to lead the energy that day in the house, it's a wrap. I have no
Mm.
control. I can have an appointment set with TD, and she will have a tantrum for something else because she wasn't engaged enough earlier in the day.
Okay. Yeah, my
And
mom
so
says you got to be smarter than your kids. You got to be smarter.
at 3, like this, and I'm watching TikTok and I'm watching Instagram, and I know I'm not the only parent with this because there's a lot of different accounts that talk about these 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds do not
They're
give a F
different. They're
about your
different.
feelings. Yes, they're different. I call them the returning generation. We have
Mm.
had examples. There was a 3-year-old 3 years ago. If you just Google 3-year-old who sold lemonade, 3-year-old lemonade, North Carolina, and diapers. This
Okay.
girl created a lemonade stand to sell, and she donated all the money she created to the homeless shelter to make sure that babies had diapers. And when you see the picture, she has her Mary Jane shoes on. She's barely can carry this box of diapers, and she looks like she's walking across the bridge in Selma.
Okay.
This little 3-year-old looks like she is not. She won her local city's Civic Person of the Year award. She was dedicated. We have a 6-year-old in Georgia 2 years ago, so she's now 8, that became the youngest certified farmer in the state of Georgia because she was trained by her great grandmother at 3 to farm. And I have
Ooh.
2 or 3 more examples of this.
So you
It's a
call them
phenomenal.
returning. So they're like
We
reincarnated.
are raising. I'm raising my great great grandmother. That's what I believe.
Ooh.
This is the 1940s generation and these little Gen A kids. They ain't here for your feelings. They're here to learn, get impacted, and move on. They got other stuff to. That's how my daughter. Like, I'm like, you wake up. She wakes up like, okay, where is the lesson from? What's the lady, Miss Rachel? Where's Miss Rachel at? I'm like, you just woke up. She don't want milk. She don't want the hug. Miss Rachel. Okay,
Okay.
good. And then she relaxes and goes, okay, hi, how you doing? But Miss Rachel's in the background teaching, and she it's
She
it's
needs her
it's scary,
lesson.
and you don't have a break. Like my wife doesn't get it. I actually have a schedule for my daughter. I have a schedule. I know I can tell you exactly what she's gonna do every hour that she's up.
I heard that.
And so when we follow the schedule, I don't have a problem. But let that schedule get messed up. That child goes pew 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 pew, and it is crazy in the house. And it's only for 3 of us.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's not, and I see other parents who are exhausted and who are like, "Yo, these kids." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And people say they have 4. I'm like, "Are you crazy? What the hell?
So can you
4?"
tell me what happened to your education, going back to your education,
Yeah.
what
So
age were
I,
you when you got into public school? You got out of the prison. No.
I got out of homeschooling in the prison. My mother, my idea of homeschooling was a prison. But when I got to school, I could read, I could write, I knew my ABCs. I actually knew how to add the addition table. So back then, it was really simple. Not like today. It was really simple. You learn to read, you learn to write, you learn. I didn't learn cursive. I learned my addition tables and
Okay.
my multiplication tables.
Okay.
But because I could read and write together, meaning I just didn't read, I didn't just know A, B, C. I actually knew words. I knew how to put the words together. So I
Okay.
was way ahead. I was considered super advanced for
Okay.
my age group.
What
I was in
age?
like third grade level reading as a first grader.
Okay.
What happened was, this is a funny story, and I haven't told it on the internet yet. So you exclusively got my funny story. I've
This is
told it in front of
exclusive.
people, but not to this will be forever on the internet. I watched Roots. I was a generation that watched Roots. I went to my first grade teacher's classroom, and I told her, I am not Kuta Kinte. I am Martin Pratt. Now, my teacher, Miss Sika, was like, what are you talking about? She
Did
told me
you
to go
have a
sit down.
black? Wait, did you have a black teacher?
No, ma'am. And so Miss Sika was Italian. I grew up in Orange, New Jersey. It was a very Italian place. And my block was integrated, but Orange at that time was more, Italian
Okay,
than it
so
was
she told you to
black.
go sit down, and then what?
Yes. And I refused to sit down because I was like this.
Okay.
So because I read, I was really impacted by stories to
Right.
the extent where I refused to watch different movies because even though I was young, I wanted to watch this movie, but I knew I was going to have to deal with the emotions of it, and I didn't know how to process and shake off the emotions. So
Okay.
I would stop myself from watching movies that seemed like it had a cliffhanger ending, or it
Okay.
wasn't a happy ending. I
Okay.
only wanted to watch sappy movies because I knew what the ending was going to be. Because I read so many books, I could tell by the character development what was going to happen. So I would watch
Mm.
scary like a James Bond movie because it's like James Bond's gonna die. It would freak me out. So I
Okay.
watched Roots, and I told this woman, I'm not Kunta Kinte. She told me to sit down, and I said hell. I didn't say hell no, but I said whatever I said. And so, and then she
I
came
said what
towards
I
me.
said. No.
Yes, she came towards me, and I kicked her in the shin.
Goodness. No.
So listen, at 6, I'm in advanced class. I'm not with the hood Negroes. I'm with the nerd black slash Italian slash Spanish kids,
Oh
right?
no.
Everybody's facing the class like, and I was there like this. I am Martin Pratt. I'm not Kuta Kente. Because I thought slavery was real. I thought we were in a slave environment to this at that point. The roots really affected me. So Mr. Bikino, I remember all these teachers' names because it was a very impactful situation. Mr. Bikino wanted to kick me out of the
Was that
district.
the principal?
Yes, that was
Okay.
Matthew Bikino. He wanted to kick me out of the district, not just out of the school. Be like, I
Right,
would have to
right,
pick
right.
a whole different. Basically, he was trying to put me in Newark. He was trying to So my mom said, well, because she had her curriculum. Remember, her curriculum, homeschool curriculum, was accepted
Okay,
by the
okay.
state of New Jersey. So my mother knew the boards of regents. My mother knew the superintendent. My mother knew all the people because she had to go through this process.
Connected. Okay. What happened?
So when that happened, she said he watched Roots, and they're like, they know that at that point society was not like it is today. White people did not know black stuff. All that we did a lot of problems with giving them access to all our content. I'm just telling y'all. So they didn't know about Roots. Roots was on national television, and white people never watched Roots in the 70s.
Ooh,
We
okay.
were the only ones interested because it was black content. You didn't see black faces all night for 4 nights or 5 nights. That was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So every black person was glued to the TV. Every white person was like, "Hey, baseball. Hey, John, what's going on?" But they didn't care. They didn't know. So Mr. Bikino said, "What's Roots?" And she explained to him. He was like, "Oh my God, you watched that?" He says, "It's on at 8 o'clock at night on national television." Yes, he watched it. This is his
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Oh." He said, "Well, he's suspended." My mother was like, "For what?" He said, "Well, kicking his teacher." He said, "Why?" What do you mean? He said, "She told him to go sit down." No, he said, "I'm not Kuta Kinte." She didn't engage with him. She didn't ask, "Who's Kuta Kinte? And why are you not Kuta Kinte?" So Mr. Kino was like, "I'm in the chair. I'm in the office while it's happening." So my mother's manipulating him. And he's like, "Well, what are you suggesting?" He said, "If he was a black teacher, she would know." And so he's like, "Oh, yes, give him the black. You know what? His punishment is put him in the black class." You know what the black class was? Mrs. Francis. You know what Miss Francis did? She
Mm-hmm.
invited us every summer to her house. You know what Miss
Okay.
Francis did? She taught us all black history. You know what Miss Francis did? She really educated me. Mrs. Francis was one of the best teachers in that damn school. So my mother was not happy that I was in Miss Sika class to begin with. I didn't know that at the time.
Mm.
So this all worked itself out. But that was my first seeing how my content consumption outside, education affected my education. So I learned a lot important lesson there. I love Battlestar Galactica. I love Star Trek. I never ever took those stories to school. Never, because that one experience I had with taking roots to school totally messed up. So I learned to leave outside content. I had a hard time in high school because the stuff that was happening in society, crack and all the others, and hip hop and rap and everything. I grew up in East Orange in high school and middle school, and I went to school with Dana Owens. I went to school with Queen Latifah. So a lot of the stuff that happened in Run DMC and all the hip hop stuff, I was at the beginning stages of that stuff, and I couldn't bridge the gap because I had such an impact situation back in the day. That to say, I did wear Adidas. I did wear shell two-tone, the what do we call them? Double fat laces. I had, we did a lot of stuff. I don't know if you remember you're probably too young to remember Devil's jeans. There was jeans before Lee. Lee had colored jeans for hip hop. There were these jeans called the Devil's jeans. And I begged my father to give me one pair. It was a devil. It was a hip hop devil like this on the back of the jeans. So you were really cool when you wore the Devil's jeans.
But thank you for telling us. I don't know anything about it. So.
Yeah. Yes, yes. So hip hop. Growing up through the hip hop generation. Another funny story, real quick about education. I went to a technical vocational high school.
Okay.
But how I got into technology was because that high school was the best high school in the northeast of New Jersey.
Okay.
Because they had a computer teacher named Mr. Bishnu who taught us programming on IBM XT and AT computers. So I learned COBOL and Fortran in high school.
COBOL and which other one?
Fortran. So those are like Unix. So all the stuff that Elon Musk is shutting down now, the government's gonna be really effed up because a lot of those programmers, they are old language programmers that you can't find today. So the new programmers today are gonna have to learn this old language, and it's gonna become hard to get some of those. And I think it's gonna be stopped. But my point is that this language that we deal with today is based on Unix and based on COBOL and Fortran. I learned that at 14. But I went to a vocational high school, not a cool high school where Queen Latifah went to, or even Whitney, what's Whitney?
Houston?
Singer. Can't think of her last name. I don't know why.
Not Whitney Houston?
Yeah, Whitney Houston. So Whitney Houston lived in East Orange. She went to East Orange High School. I went to this Newark High School called Essex County Vocational Technical and Career Center. Okay. And it was like, there was only 400 kids in the high school. It wasn't a cool high school. I didn't get beat up, but the high school got jumped on a daily basis. Like the Newark High School would come by and beat up the nerd kids, so to speak.
Okay, so how did this affect like your like going to college or after high school? How did that affect you?
So because I went to a vocational high school, I got to work at my sophomore year.
Okay.
I decided I didn't want to go to college. I worked for the top company in New Jersey called Port Authority of New York, New Jersey. And I worked at World Trade Center. I worked at Newark Airport, JFK, Teterboro, LaGuardia. I was the first technology person for a unit called Financial Services. They were in charge of the gate, all the fees that the Port Authority collects from all these companies that do business with them. That unit was there for reporting to the board about what today's money came in.
Okay.
Back then, they were still doing things by hand. So what I learned in high school with the IBM XT, when the IBM AT, the first computer with a hard drive came out, I learned how to program, and it was simple, just installing a program. But I learned to program something called SuperCalc. SuperCalc was the predecessor to Lotus 123 and then Excel. Okay. SuperCalc, DBase Plus, and a word processing program called WordStar 2000. This was in 1988. Oh, that's sorry, I graduated in 88. This was 1986. Okay. So I installed these programs for what was called financial analysts to use, and they were old white men who were using this scientific calculator, the HP calculator, and these books with green paper in it. There was a printer called the Oki Data dot matrix printer. Go. I had to install those things in each of the units and
As
then
a
teach them how to use it.
sophomore.
Yes.
Wow. That
So I actually
resume
had
is
a car service that
amazing.
would pick me up. I had a car service to pick me up from high school and
Okay.
take me because I had security clearance to get on the tarmac. So the financial services units for back then they were in the traffic control building. They were
Okay.
behind the gates and all that stuff. So the security guys, it wasn't a like a nice car service or anything like that. It was a car that had the word Port Authority of New Jersey on it, and they would it was quicker for them if I took the bus and came to the airport, or not World Trade Center, because World Trade Center you get on the PATH train, but all the airports they have service roads to get to where I had to go to. So it was
Okay.
quicker if they picked me up from school and took me straight there than for me to go take the bus and do other stuff. So anyway, so that made me realize I didn't want to go to college. I was in a what do you call it? I was in a advanced class to get into Rutgers and also to get into there was a 2-year college called Essex County College. So I could have an associate degree when I graduated. I have an associate degree when I graduated at 12th grade. But
Okay.
the program was you graduate at 12 and go right to Rutgers. So you could go to Rutgers and get out of Rutgers by 2 years instead of 4 years.
But you decided not to do that.
Yeah, I was done with school. I
Okay.
I I
So
wasn't.
hold on. We have to say this because I am calling you Dr. Pratt. Tell us about how you got Dr. Pratt, right?
Yes, so I have an honorary PhD. So it's not I haven't some people feel like you have an earned PhD when you go to a PhD program. What's
Mm-hmm.
my honorary degree in? It's in philosophy of pop culture. So we need another show to explain why I have that. But real quick, what I will say is I was one of the first people on Twitter. Not one of I was the first person on Twitter with the word black in their Twitter name. So because of that, my Twitter name was I Love Black Women, and because of that, I was invited from a black media company to help them cover celebrity events, and also at the same time, my aunt opened the first black bookstore in Washington Heights, in New York, and I worked in the bookstore also. So in 2003, this is before the Twitter I'm talking about. I was running a bookstore and I had a radio show called Tech No Color Radio Show. I was the only technology talk show on FM radio in New York. So on
Okay.
93 FM WHCR, I was on it for 13 years, from 2003 to 2016. We were the only technology talk show every Monday night. So the talk show, the bookstore, and then being one of the founders of Black Twitter. When I learned about the honorary degree program, I was like, I need that. Because I have done pop culture for so from 2003. Let me give you my backstory a little bit too. So I started working on something called Black Planet before it was Black Planet. It was
Okay.
at the time I worked on it. It was called New York Online. Black Planet was the first black website that monetized monthly fees for access to member profiles.
Okay.
So I know the founder of that, Omar. He was in my neighborhood. We actually were neighbors. He started in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. I also was the internet cafe administrator for a cafe that Spike Lee owned. Dana and her mom were investors. Queen Latifah, Tracy Chapman, and Alice Walker's daughter, Rebecca Walker. The cafe was called Cocoa Bar,
Oh
and
my
that was in
goodness.
Fort Greene, Brooklyn in '96. So if you
That
Google.
resume doesn't disappoint, Dr. Pratt. Whoa.
Well, so I feel like I deserve my honorary degree because I have been around pop culture, black pop culture, in a significant, unique way. Like I remember Erica Badu. I met Erica Badu when she used to walk barefoot in Fort Greene in the poetry era. When Saul Williams and Jessica Care Moore. Jessica Care Moore is a poet that was on um uh what's the name? Oh God, what's the in Harlem, the why am I blanking on Harlem's Harlem's amateur night. What
Apollo?
The Apollo amateur night. So when Black poetry was taking off like this, Erica Badu was in our neighborhood walking around barefoot.
Okay.
Living Single was developed in that same neighborhood. So one of the writers, not the person who's given credit for Living Single, but her co-writer who's never given credit, she based the brownstone, their life. Again, Queen Latifah figures in my life a lot. Not because we physically are friends or anything, but we just ended up being in the same space a lot of times. And then I'm thinking of Black Girls Rock. I met DJ Beverly Bond before she sold it to BET. So I covered Black Girls Rock when it was owned by her, and she held it in New York Times, the New York Times building. They had a brand new building, and she held it in their theater.
Okay.
And so I wore a T-shirt that says "I love Black women" with a Black woman's face on a T-shirt. That was my brand. And so because all those things kind of converge at the same time,
Okay.
I think it was I've only had the honorary degree for a year. So when I learned about the program, I was like, yes. And so I'll just tell your audience, there's levels to honorary degrees. Just like there's levels to the Presidential Lifetime Award. There's a presidential medal that has Biden's face, Obama's face, and now Trump's face on it, or Trump's face again. And those presidential awards are just like TEDx Talks. Okay. So because you get it doesn't necessarily mean that the president knows you, but it's a brand that's licensed and you get an award. And so if somebody wants to give you the presidential award, they have to pay a licensing fee to use that award to give that to you. The same thing with honorary degrees. It's some of them the school gives it to you because you gave something to the school. Some of them you can find out about a program. You can take the program and you pay your fee and you get your degree.
Okay.
Yeah. But you need to. I feel like everywhere I am, I tell people, have the HON, so everybody knows it's not a we'll call it an unearned PhD. It's an honorary degree. I mean, I just but I've gone toe to toe with a lot of different educators that are upset that regular folks can get an honorary degree. So
your resume does not disappoint. Yeah, I would say
I agree with you.
let
100%.
them know where they can find you if they want to work with you, because
Sure.
you know so much about social media. You very, he's a genius.
So
Like,
I do my best. I would say the best place to interact with me is LinkedIn. And so I'm Martin Pratt, Dr. Martin Pratt on LinkedIn. But other places, here on YouTube, I'm Ask Dr. Pratt. On TikTok, I'm Ask Dr. Pratt. On Instagram, I'm my initials, which is LMJ Pratt. And Twitter, I'm also LMJ Pratt.
Facebook? Are you on Facebook? Because it's also on Facebook.
Yes, I'm on Facebook as Dr. Martin Pratt too. Yeah, at Facebook I don't really interact a lot, okay. But I'm there. I check it every day. I check it every 15 minutes. So every platform I check every 15 minutes. Unfortunately, I have so much history and so many connections. I'm proud to say that on all the platforms, I would say 90% of my followers. I actually know them. Like I actually know their story. I know where their kids went to school at, or I know. So I got in social media so early. I got to learn people, and if you followed me and you stand out, I want to know more about you, because I want to help you, not because I want to make money from you, but it's I want you to be able to stand on the shoulders. Like I stood on a lot of people's shoulders. I stand on a lot of people's shoulders. Unfortunately, most of the people's shoulders I stand on are no longer on this planet, but a lot of those Black folks that helped me out. And so I learned early to give Black.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, any last words you want to say to
for parenting? I would just say, yes, parents. I would just say you're not alone. Please create your tribe. Please create people that you can talk to, so you don't feel like you're the only parent going through this, because you're not. I guarantee you. Whatever your child's putting you through, or whatever your grandchild's going through, I swear to God, I'm so happy to be alive at this moment in history, because I'm learning so much about the shared experience that we all have, but we don't talk about. Okay. And it's like it is. One of the things I like to leave people with is real quick. Google, is your brain or your heart stronger electricity wise? So just Google, is my heart stronger than my brain in electricity? And so your heart,
Okay.
it is more electrical currents running through our hearts than our brain. What does that mean for centering our life? What's in your heart? Not what's in your head. So when you're struggling and facing issues, go to your heart. Protect your heart, because your heart is beating and is the strongest current we have in our body. That means that your love you have for your child is going to help you deliver that child to their adult passion, purpose, no matter what the F your brain is telling you. But if you don't know that, we'll stay in our head going, oh my God, what's this child going to grow up? Blah, 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 blah. And then people in our life are like, oh my God, your child doesn't sit down. Oh, your child's not talking fast enough. What's in your heart? So, and that's a great way to stop people from saying stuff to you. You say, I get it. Tell them the fact about the heart and ask them, excuse me, auntie, what's your heart desire for her? Oh, well, I want her to, okay, great. Stay there. Why do I say? Because your brain has less electricity. It's not as important. But what's in your heart, and usually, hopefully, everybody in your life, their heart is in the right place. And there's all these sayings that we people say that makes a lot of sense now, but it didn't make sense that I'm on this planet 53 years. For 53 years, I'm thinking the brain, what's in my head is the most important place. It's not.
Okay, well, that's a word. He left us with a word, right? Now, make sure you go and follow Dr. Pratt. Get in contact with him if you want to work with him on social media because he has so much insight. And make sure that you, parents and educators out there, do something today that gives your kids a competitive advantage. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.